Hello and welcome back again, coffee beans. This is agricultural processing, handling and storage. Definition of terms. Part 4. Ice storage system. A thermal storage system, usually designed for comfort cooling, which uses the phase change properties of water, ice. Immature grains. Paddy grains which are underdeveloped, or not fully developed, sometimes referred to as unripe. Paddy which are light green and chalky with soft texture. Impurities. Impurity in the paddy. Brown rice or milled rice grains which may be other crop seeds. Chaff. Immature grains. Bits of wood and other plant materials. Sand. Stones. Metal. Glass. Dust and other foreign matter. Inadvertent contact. Unplanned contact between a person and a hazard, resulting from the person's actions during normal operation or servicing of equipment. Indirect fired furnace. Furnace which fires into a combustion chamber that is vented outside the curing compartment. Indirect heating. Dryer. A dryer that uses a heat exchanger for heating air. In-store drying. A type of drying wherein grain is dried slowly with the use of other ambient or heated forced air during bulk storage. Insulation. Material that retards or resists the flow of heat or electricity. Intermittent flow system. Alternating use, by an industry, of deionized water to remove contaminants from products and equipment. Internal bin wall ladder. A ladder attached to the interior surface of a grain bin wall. Kernel. Dry and indehiscent seed developed from the ovary of the ear corn. Kiln. A heated chamber for drying lumber, veneer, and other wood products in which temperature and relative humidities are controlled. Kiln charge. The total amount of lumber or wood items in a dry kiln. Kiln dried. Lumber or other wood items that were dried in a closed chamber in which temperature and relative humidity of the circulated air can be controlled. The drying temperature is usually greater than outside air temperature. Kiskisen. More popular and most patronized mill in rural areas. It is composed mainly of a metal cylinder with rectangular protrusions running along its whole length and a hollow cylinder casing. It works on the principle of friction in dehulling the paddy. A low recovery of 50 to 60% is obtained. K value. A measure of material's resistance to the flow of heat. Label. Includes any tag, brand, mark, pictorial, or other descriptive matter, written, printed, marked, embossed or impressed on, or attached to a container of food. Labeling. Means any written, printed or graphic matter, 1, upon any article or any of its containers or wrappers, or 2, accompanying the packaged food. Laboratory dryer. A dryer that is scaled down unit of either the continuous flow or the batch dryer, but which causes a very slow drying rate or mild drying to avoid stressing the grains and to set the standard with which results to the test dryer will be compared. Laboratory sieve shaker. Equipment with definite shaking motion used to sort the size of milled materials using standard screen sieves. Lactic acid fermentation is the decomposition of sugar to lactic acid by the lactic acid bacteria. Laminar flow. Flow in which there are no cross currents or eddies, and where the fluid elements move in approximately parallel directions. Large broken milled grain is a rice particle with a length of 3/8 or more but shorter than 6/8. Latent heat. Change of enthalpy during a change of state is the quantity of heat required to change the state of a body without an increase in temperature. Latent heat of evaporation is the change of heat, energy, required to change the unit mass of a substance from a liquid to a gas. Latent load refers to heat loads principally coming from people. Infiltration air, ventilation air and moisture releasing appliances. Laterally loaded connections refers to the most common nailed connections. Load is applied perpendicular to the length of the nail. Lateral resistance in end grain. A type of laterally loaded connection wherein the nail is driven parallel to the grain of holding member. Lateral resistance inside grain. A type of laterally loaded connection wherein the nail is driven perpendicular to the grain of holding member. Leaching. The outward diffusion of hydrosoluble constituents of the paddy kernel into the soak water during the soaking process of parboiling. Line pressure. The pressure of the fuel in the supply line to the dryer. Liquefaction. Act or process of hydrolysis. Rendering or becoming liquid, reduction to a liquid state. Liquid line. Carries the liquid refrigerant from the receiver tank to the refrigerant flow control. Lot. Refers to a quality of food produced under essentially the same conditions during a particular production schedule. Lowry Process. An empty cell process in which the air in the wood is compressed solely by the preservative introduced into the retort under pressure. Machine dried grain. Grain which has been dried by means of the test dryer. Makeup heater. Furnace. Usually on an exterior wall, which adds heat to an incoming forced fresh air stream and exhausts, or distributes it into the room. Manometer, open type, is a gauge in the form of a glass U-tube, one leg of which is open to the atmosphere, or a straight tube, one end of which is open to the atmosphere, instrument which measures the pressure of liquids and gases by fluid displacement. Manual defrosting. Defrosting by natural means with manual initiation and termination of overall defrost operation. Material other than grain. MOG. Feed rate, the weight of material other than grain passing trough the combine per unit of time expressed in metric tons per hour. Material other than grain, MOG, to grain ratio, the total weight of material other grain, MOG divided by the total weight of grain in a sample. Maximum crushing strength, maximum stress sustained by compression members under a load slowly applied parallel to the grain. Maximum input capacity, the mass of milled rice per unit of milling time, expressed in kilogram per hour. Mechanically damaged grain, grains that were broken and or dehulled partially or fully, as a result of the threshing operation. Mechanically damaged kernels, kernels that were broken and or scratched as a result of shelling operation. Median size, particle diameter at 50% probability of a size distribution curve. Medium grain, palai, is a palai whose average length of the full-size brown rice grain ranges from 5.55 to 6.5 millimeters. Medium-size brokens, broken pieces of rice grains, between 1/4 and 1/2 a kernel size. Melting, change of state from solid to liquid caused by absorption of heat. Meter, moisture, an instrument used for rapid determination of the moisture content of a wood by electrical means. Microhydro, the energy of falling or running water which can be converted into rotary motion and in turn produces mechanical or electrical energy. Milk cooler, apparatus capable of cooling milk to the required temperature prior to collecting or processing. Milled rice, rice obtained from paddy after the husk and bran have been removed, grains obtained after the removal of hull and bran. Milling, a general term representing the process of converting paddy into rice. Milling capacity, quantity of paddy that a rice mill can process to a specified quality per total milling time. Expressed in kilogram per hour. Milling degree, extent or degree by which the bran layer of the brown rice is removed as a result of whitening, the extent or degree by which the bran covering the brown rice is removed as a result of the whitening process. Milling recovery, the ratio of the weight of milled rice produced to the weight of paddy passed through to the milling operation expressed in percent. Milling recovery index, the ratio of the milling recovery obtained in the actual testing to the milling recovery obtained from the laboratory test mill. Milling yield or milling outurn, the amount of water in the grain, expressed as percentage based on wet or dry. Mixing type, continuous flow dryer wherein the grains in the drying bin flows through the column in a straight path. Moisture content, the amount of water inside the product. Moisture gradient, difference between the maximum and the minimum grain moisture content randomly sampled after drying. Moisture-induced or hygroscopic pressures, pressures induced by expansion of grain resulting from increases in moisture content. Moisture reduction rate, ratio of the average percent moisture content removed from the grain to drying time, expressed in percent per hour. Modeling, patches are spots of different colors usually used for the color pattern developed due to partial anaerobism. Multi-pass dryer, mechanical grain dryer wherein grain is passed intermittently in cycles or stages through a drying chamber either by mechanical means or by gravity which subsequent cooling and tempering until grain reaches the desired moisture content. Multi-pass rice mill that employs a series of 2 or more whitening machines. A commercial scale milling unit characterized by several passing of the grains before the final milled rice is produced. Multipurpose cold store, one that can store all kinds of foodstuffs, generally at different temperatures. Natural convection, heat transfer caused by the density difference between hot and cold fluids. Net cracked kernel, difference between the percent cracked sample taken before and after the shelling operation. Non-condensable gas, gas in a refrigerating system that does not condense at the temperature and partial pressure at which it exists in the condenser, therefore imposing a higher head pressure on the system. Non-mixing type continuous flow dryer, wherein the grains in the drying bin flows through the column in a straight path. Non-renewable resources, are natural resources that can be used up completely or else used up to such a degree that it is economically impractical to obtain any more of them. Nutrition information, means any representation which states, suggests or implies that food has particular nutritional properties including but not limited to the energy value and to the content of protein, fat and carbohydrates, as well as vitamins and minerals. Oil cooler, a heat exchanger which can be cooled by air, water or refrigerant vaporization to cool oil in a lubrication system. Open frame cylinder, type of shelling cylinder where the shelling elements are attached to the equally spaced longitudinal bars arranged cylindrically. Output capacity, the mass of milled rice per unit of milling time, expressed in kilogram per hour. Output paddy, the total mass of dried grain discharged from the dryer at the end of the dryer test period. Ovendry, a term used to describe wood that has been dried in a ventilated oven at 103 ± 2 degrees Celsius. Until there is no further loss in weight. Overmilled rice, is a rice grain from which the hull, the germ and the bran layers have been completely removed. Paddy, the rice kernel with the husk on it, sometimes referred to as rough rice or palai. Patty grater. Auxiliary device used to classify patty based on length and thickness. An auxiliary device of rice mill system which groups together patty of the same length or of the same thickness. Patty husker or huller. A device which removes the husk or hull from the patty grains. Patty separation. Refers to separating dehusked patty from any remaining patty grains. Most dehuskers remove about 90% of the husk. Patty separator. Auxiliary device used to separate patty from the brown rice. Parboiling. Hydrothermal treatment of patty before milling. Includes soaking, treating with heat, and red drying. Paste. Is a mixture of cement and water. Pasteurization. The foods are subjected to a temperature below the boiling point of water for a period sufficient to ensure preservation, that is 71 to 85 C. Pasteurized milk. Is a fresh milk heated to a temperature of not lower than 145 degrees Fahrenheit for a period of not less than 30 minutes. Pavement drying. A conventional sun-drying practice which uses concrete pavements such as basketball court, etc., as the drying surface. Payback period. Number of years needed for product and net operating income to pay for the capital investment in the project. Pellet. An agglomeration of individual ground ingredients, or mixture of such ingredients. Commonly used for animal feeds. Percentage broken milled rice. The percentage of milled rice grains measuring less than 3/4 the size of its full head rice from the mass of the corresponding input patty to the rice husker then to the whitener. Percentage cracked brown rice. The number of grains showing cracks or fissures per 100 grains of hand-husked patty. Percent head rice. Ratio of weight of the grains that do not break in the process of milling and with a size of 3/4 or more of the whole grain to the total weight of milled rice. Expressed in percent. Percent head rice index. Ratio of the percent head rice obtained in actual testing to the percent head rice obtained from the laboratory test mill. Pitted tube. Is used to measure the pressure of water discharging from the nozzle or flowing in a pipe by having its open end in the water and the other is connected to a gauge or manometer, device for measuring the velocity head of flowing fluid. Plate freezer. A double contact freezer consisting of a series of parallel refrigerated metal plates. Plenum. Chamber wherein air pressure is developed for uniform distribution of the heated air through the grain mass. An air chamber maintained under pressure usually connected to one or more distributing ducts in a drying or aeration system. Plug flow. Flow from a bin in which the grain moves out of the bin in a manner such that movement occurs along all of the bin wall. Polisher. Auxiliary device of a rice mill, which removes the remaining small bran particles on the milled rice and gives it a glossy appearance. Polishing or refining. This is the process of removing the powdered bran adhering to the milled rice. Dry potatoes. Potatoes put into the bin under normal harvesting moisture condition without being sprayed with water and or chemical fungicide or rained on. Wet potatoes. Potatoes that have been sprayed with water and or with chemical fungicide or have been rained on during bin filling operations. Pre-cleaner or scalperator. An auxiliary device of rice mill system groups together patty of the same length or of the same thickness. Premix. Blend of small amount of dietary ingredient with a suitable carrier. For example, a small amount of a feed additive in cornmeal. Prepackage. Means packaged and or made up in advance in a container. Ready for sale to the consumer. Oil-Borne Preservative. A preservative that is applied to wood in the form of a solution in oil. Water-borne preservative. A wood preservative that is in the form of a solution in water. Pressure drop. Loss in pressure from one end of a refrigerant line to the other or through a component. Caused by static friction or heat loss. Pressure relief valve. A valve held closed by a spring or other means and designed to automatically relieve pressure in excess of its setting, also called a safety valve or relief valve. Primary refrigerant. The working fluid of a refrigeration cycle, as opposed to secondary refrigerant. Processing aids are additives that are used in the processing of food to achieve a specified technological purpose and which may or may not result in the presence of residue or derivatives in the final product. Proportioning mill. A device in which dietary ingredients are blended in set proportions and ground in a mill. Psychometer is an instrument used for ascertaining the humidity of hygrometric state of the atmosphere. Purging is the removing of air from the refrigeration system. The operation is by drawing a mixture of refrigerant vapor and air from the condenser or receiver. Condense the refrigerant by cooling or by compression and cooling. Vent off the non-condensables. And return to the liquid refrigerant to the system. Purity. Percentage of grains free of foreign matter. Quick freezing refers to freezing products such that the deepest portion hardens in 30 minutes. Hope it helps. Thank you again for listening. Please like, subscribe and comment your suggestion on topics you want to hear. Links of previous topics are stated in the description box below. See you in the next part. Bye. Rar.